chose this topic because I kind of like these two things quite a bit. My name is Rob Mansfield. I am the youth pastor here. I've been youth ministering for, I don't know, it's been about 20 years. And so this topic of technology is really big to teens and big to youth. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's college or age or even past that, but I'm not going to take it, and make the assumption that you guys aren't plugged in as well. And in fact, most of you are, if you're anything like me, plugged into the internet and the computer, and all that technology influences you on all your research and all your looking up. And so we're going to look at how that impacts our apologetics today. So what I have here is I have some handouts. I forgot to, so if I can just pass these things out just down the rows there, kind of divide them up here, and we'll kind of get these going down here. And these are just notes that I can just kind of take, and I'm just going to go ahead and pass those back there. So let me make sure I got my presenter there. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Since I'm talking about technology, you can write on the pen there on your paper. We have a guest Wi-Fi here, and so if you need to access the internet and check out exactly and verify what I'm talking about. I'm just joking. Wallen Wi-Fi is the password for our account here. So that'll get you anywhere in the building here. So Wallen Wi-Fi, it's all lowercase, and that's the guest, WBC guest or whatever, the Wallen guest. No, it's just all one word, just Wallen Wi-Fi, and just spell it out. So if you go to Wallen here, that'll be deactivated on Friday. So anyway, just let you know. Don't get your hopes up, that's right. But anyway, we're talking about technology and apologetics. Right before I came in here, my wife, she was doing some stuff up in our, down in the kitchen, and something happened. It was, just something with an ironing or something like that. Well, that was happening up in the room, but downstairs the blender wasn't going. And she looks at me and goes, "I hate technology." And she just says, and you've probably said it before, and you've probably heard other people talk about that, and you hate technology. And I look at her, she knows what I'm talking about this morning, so I don't know if she was trying to raise my gander or whatever. And I said, so you just really despise anything that improves or makes your life better. Is that what you're telling me right now? And she looks at me and goes, "Well, it just makes life more complicated. It makes it, why?" So you're saying, and I started doing, bringing her back. I'll say, so you don't like windows, you don't like, wood type products, you don't like our house, and all those things, and you bring it back to a common denominator. And we say we hate technology, but technology is a part of our life. And technology, basically, in the definition, is anything that was not created that is used in a way that you create something out of the resources that God created from day one. Okay, so or the week one, if you want to put it that way. So technology is grabbing those resources that God did not create in that manner and using those resources to make new things in order to enhance or improve our life. So technology is that. There's nothing inherently wrong with technology. But Tertullian, in the beginning of the 3rd century, makes this quote. He goes, "What does Athens have to do with Jerusalem?" Makes this quote just saying, and what he's talking about there is, what does the philosophy or all the new stuff that Athens have to do with Jerusalem? And Jerusalem would have been the hub of Christianity at that point. So basically what Tertullian is saying here is, what does all that new stuff that we see in the world, that Athens was the cutting edge in relation to all the technology of that day, what does Athens have to do with Jerusalem? What does the mindset that, and so it'd be kind of like us saying this, what does Silicon Valley have to do with Jerusalem? Or what does technology have to do with Christianity? There's the better question. The question is, what does technology have to do with Christianity? Is there a place for it? And so we're going to look at, first of all, technology and how it impacts our faith and our lives to begin with. I would say this, is technology neutral, or what is the purpose of technology? No technology is neutral. I'm just letting you know. If you're a computer programmer in here, you know that when you create a program, you just don't create it mindlessly with not having an aim in the end. And so when you create something if you're an engineer or if you're a computer science type of person, you create something in order to meet and to a specific goal in mind. Technology is not neutral. There is an end result that is in mind every time something is created there when it comes to the world of technology. And I have there on the next point there's a direction as well as structure to all technology. There's an aim. So anything you have, whether it be, an iPad or your phone or your computer, there was an intent behind that of the creators of that technology wanted to attain. And so I like this next point, and I kind of thought about this. Technology kind of solves a problem, and I read this in a couple things. It's to push back some of the effects of sin. And as we start to deal with technology, what was the first thing that was created after the fall that was not normal? Clothes. To push back the effects of sin. And since then, technology has been pushing back the effects of sin, whether it be our mind, whether it be through our bodies, whether it be through the effects of all the fall. Technology is pushing of trying to limit the effects of that on us and on this world. We're weak. We die. The thing about the technology has to do with medicine. The thing about the technology to do with our minds that we can't remember as much. The thing about the technology of all those things. Technology, whether or not it's intentional or not, it's pushing back the effects of sin in our life. The effects of sin on this world. The effects of the fall. And so the point there is the necessity of technology. It's biblical. God's plan was for technology. When he talks about in Genesis to fill the earth, he's not just talking about there of filling it with kids, because that was be fruitful and multiply was that command. To fill it was meaning go out and use this world in a way to fill it and to make use of it. It's a biblical premise. God, the very sand that Adam was walking on will one day become glass. Technology is a very big part, and God knew that. And so, in fact, if you have your Bibles, I'd like going to Psalm 107. And I just refer back to this one. It's kind of a great example, and there's many more of these. But Psalm 107. And by the way, I'm going to talk about my use of technology here in a second and using this thing. But Psalm 107 and verse 23, kind of interesting. And it may not seem like much, this verse. It says, some went out in the sea in ships. They were merchants on the mighty waters. They saw the works of the Lord, his wonderful deeds in the deep. Now, okay, what's the big deal about that? Well, without technology, they would have never been able to see that incredible creation of God. See, and so, hey, they sail out in these ships, and they see how vast and how enormous the sea is. Without technology, without microscopes and telescopes, we don't see the magnificence of God as much as before. And so technology kind of lets us have an insight of how great God is as well. And so technology, it'll be part of the future. And so we have to acknowledge its presence. When I say future, you want to just roll something out in your mind here. When the Bible was written, they were using technological terms that were most advanced at that time. When it describes heaven, it's using technological terms. Cities, streets, a book of life. Those type of things were terms of technology that were cutting edge at that time. And so God, when he describes the future, says, and and you can play around with this in your mind. I can't really point. But you know what? Technology may be part of heaven as well. Because there will be a city there. There will be streets. And so we have to recognize that it won't just revert back to Eden. It is a new city. It is a new heaven and a new earth, but it has civilization there as well. So, but technology can be misused as well, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. So what do we gain and what do we lose? I think it's great having technology. What used to take me in apologetics, what used to take me months, days to research something, now takes me minutes and sometimes even seconds. To go on the internet and be able to just click and go to a site that I trust, and it gives me the answers right then and there, and I love it. I'm telling you, it makes my research so much easier. And if you are involved in apologetics, you can get apps now, and we're going to talk about some of those things. You can get apps on your phone or on your smart device, whatever it may be, and you use that stuff. You use it for your research. You use it for defending your faith. I do all the time for those type of things. So I love it, but it comes at a little bit of a price too. And we're going to talk about that price and the temptations that come along with that. And then one of the things that you can find here is my faith in God, or is it in technology? And so I can start thinking, wow, I really rely upon these things more so than God. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit later, but sometimes I can use that technology as a leverage tool to say, I got more facts than you do. And so now it's a fact-throwing match instead of a heart match. And so, my faith becomes of how much I know. My faith becomes of how quickly I can resource those facts, and how quickly I can respond to that. And so technology, I put my trust sometimes in that more so than saying, God, please change their heart. Instead of saying, hey, why don't you go to this website and check it out? Or I start researching it even more. And if you can identify with any of that stuff, that's where I find myself a lot. I have my my list of websites that I'll go to, and I'll resource them, and I'll refer back to them over and over. But I want you to turn to another passage. It's also found in the book of Psalms. Turn to Psalms 115. Because I think technology, and it's changed. It always is changing. It's always morphing. Because I think because of the needs of our society, because I think the sinfulness of our society, I think because it's just the nature of that we build upon one thing after another and things progress. But I think here's the temptation. And if you look at Psalm 115, kind of really talks about idols here. And I think technology, and I'll take a step out here. I'll say technology has probably become the modern idol of our day and age. Whether it be the phones, and whether it be our computers, whether it be the internet, it's become our idol. It's become something that we go back to and we say, I made this with my hands and I rely upon it. In fact, look at this thing. This is really cool, and because I think sometimes we have a hard time grasping what a modern idol looks like. I think, yeah, you may have money and materialism and relationships of that nature. But look at verse 2. Look at verse 1. Not to us, Lord, not to us, but to your name be the glory because of your love and faithfulness. There's the goal of technology. When you use it, there's your goal. There's the end result. But then, why do the nations say, where is their God? Our God is in heaven. He does whatever pleases him. But their idols are silver and gold, made by human hands. They have mouths but cannot speak, eyes but cannot see. They have ears but cannot hear, noses but cannot smell. They have hands but cannot feel. feet but cannot walk, nor can they utter a sound with their throats. Those who make them, look at this next line. You don't think this is really descriptive of our culture? Those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them. And it goes, all you Israelites, trust in the Lord, and it goes on there. But that last verse there that we just read, verse 8, those who make them will be like them. And I'm going to try to explain to you how we've become like our technology, and how we've started to go down that path. And it just isn't here. In Isaiah chapter 44, it also talks about how we become like our creations. And that's the temptation that we face when we deal with technology, is we become more like it, and it starts to own us instead of us owning it. And so when it comes to apologetics, this is a big deal. Now, St. Benedict, in the monastery here, if you see behind him there, in about the 1200s AD, there was clocks, and they were the first ones to utilize a clock. And let me tell you the story what happened here. There's a monastery, St. Benedict monastery, and the monks there, they made it a plan there that they would pray 6 times a day. So the clock was invented to help them in their devotional life. So every time it was time to have their devotions, the bell would chime on the clock. Boom. Then the next time. And it regulated their spiritual life. What an incredible invention. What an incredible thing of technology. And it helped them in their walk with God. Now, let me ask you this. Where's the clock now? The clock dictates what we do. It runs our life. I mean, how many times have you checked the clock already this morning? When was the last time the clock rang and you think, oh man, I need to do something for God? And it hasn't. And so I'm not saying the clock was bad when it first was invented. It surely wasn't. But because of that, it has been used in a way that now regulates society and regulates all humans. They say that the clock is probably one of the foremost inventions of all time. You know, you have the Gutenberg press, the printing press. You have the language, the writing, the alphabet. Another one they say has really instrumental as far as the technological advances that has really been an invention is the map. The map has, when that was created, that was like, wow, we actually know there's other things out there. Now, some of you didn't use one getting here probably, or maybe had a hard time doing that, or GPS now. And so I want you to see this because this is it tells you how technology, we become like it. The clock was first created in a way to help us in our devotional life. And it regulated everything. And now our lives are so regulated. Freedom is not there. And so, now, another story I want to tell you, Plato, and he wrote this Phaedrus, and Phaedrus, Socrates never wrote anything on his own. Plato was the guy that would write down the stuff that he would say. And so Socrates was talking to Phaedrus about the invention of writing. And there's this story, and it's a mythological story that takes place in Egypt between Thuth, which was the god, and Tamus, who was the king of Egypt at that time. And Thuth was the one and he invented all these different things. He invented math and geometry and all these type of things. And he goes to King Tamus and says, here they are. You can have them. And they're going to advance your society. And Socrates is talking about this. But look at this quote here that we find. Should the Egyptians learn to write, Tamus goes on, this is the king, it will implant forgetfulness in their souls. They will cease to exercise memory because they rely on that which is written, calling things to remembrance no longer from within themselves, but by means of external marks. Now, we're going to flip to the next slide there, but you see how this impacts apologetics right now? That no longer, now this is just writing. This is just books that we read. Okay, but he was talking about, hey, it's going to have this forgetfulness, that it's not going to be something that is of me that I really believe on my own. It's going to be something that I have to resource in order to find. Apologetics is moving to that direction, even more so now than it was back about 2,300 years ago when this was written. Think about now how much we forget and we can't resource. If I took away your internet and I took away your resources, would you be able to defend your faith? Would I be able to defend my faith if I didn't have all those links that I could go to and resource it? It'd be tough. You see where apologetics is going, and you shut that down for a minute. Where's all of our apologists at that point? If we don't learn and know how to read again and go back to that and resource and have those things and have it to memory and have it in our heart, we're kind of in a bad position as apologists. And I'm not just talking about us. I'm talking about the Christian community. Because Christian community right now gets a question. They have to go on their app, look it up on their app, and quickly start to resource it. See, apologists, we're moving in this direction, but look at the next phrase here. And this is, those who rely on reading for their knowledge will seem to know much, while for the most part, they know nothing. 2,300 years ago. Sounds like this was written last night, doesn't it? And so you have Plato's Book of Phaedrus here, then this is Socrates talking. Now, this is going from, and there's levels of understanding there if you look there. The first one was verbal. And verbal is the most impactful form of communication. And in fact, it's the most impactful form of, if you're going to do apologetics. Verbal. This is it. Now, the next one up there, you see, or on your paper, is written. Written is a book that you actually read, if I can define it in such a way, or something that's tangible that you turn a page on in that way. In fact, there's connections there that if you read something on a Kindle, or if you read something on an iPad, if you can't turn a page, it doesn't have quite the impact on your brain. Now, we're getting technical on this one, but written, and there's such a thing as deep reading. That your brain has to process information in order to accept it, in order to believe it. It has to sit on it. It just can't just refer, it just can't go do, and then somehow I know more knowledge, but it has to be able to. That's why when you read a book, they call it deep reading, and you have to sit there and you read it and you process it, because your brain only goes so fast, and it goes so fast when you're reading because it's processing that stuff. And then the last one, is resourcing. Is now we're in a resourcing age right now, where everything's resourced. And so that's kind of where we're at. And, I wonder what Socrates would have said about that. And not like he's the guru on anything. But anyway, look at the next part there. And we have modernism versus postmodernism. This is the problem that I think that the internet brings. Modernism is concerned with facts. Postmodernism can't believe those facts. So you have a modernistic thing of the internet that is just throwing facts out there as quick as anything. A modernistic says we need those facts. The postmodern says I can't believe them. In fact, I'll interpret those facts however I want. So now you see the clash that's going on when it comes to apologetics, especially on the internet. That we got more facts. We can defend our faith better now than we could ever in history. We have more support archaeologically. We have more support across the board on the reliability of the scriptures. Everything is there. But those are our viewpoint as far as we're from a modern. But postmodern says, yeah, okay, those facts are great. I don't care. You throw me all of the websites you want, but I'm still not going to believe them. Or I'll make my own interpretation of those. So you have both sides going at it. It's kind of paradoxical that both things are going on at the same time. It's kind of like everything is questioned, and yet everything is supported at the same time. You don't think it's tough to be in apologetics right now? You don't think what type of culture, what type of life that we have now, that anything that's ever said can be checked out immediately. Anything. I mean, you do it all the time. I mean, you get that smartphone out. I mean, we have battles of that at home. Like if someone says something, in fact, I was at a ball game the other day, and my wife says, hey, sunscreen expires in 2 years. And I'm like, really? Where'd you get that from? So I'm on my phone. I go to the Mayo Clinic. I said, nope, 4 years. And so, I'm checking it out right then and there. You don't think they do that with us when we present our viewpoint, and we better be accurate with that? And so that's the problem. That's the issue that's at hand. We can be verified immediately. You don't think from the pulpit up here that people are not checking out and verifying everything that's going on? And so it becomes very difficult to present because, and it's not necessarily that I'm going to believe those facts, even if they are correct, but I'm just going to be cynical with those. And so let's keep on. What is the purpose and impact of computer technology? And by the way, what is the purpose and impact? How has computer technology impacted us? There's this individual, Marshall McLuhan, and Marshall wrote this. He was a Canadian philosopher, and really was a prophet in his day of talking about the impact of technology and the web and all that type of stuff. And he says there's 4 laws of media and technology. And I'll read these off and then you can just write. He goes, what does technology enhance? That's the rule number 1, or question number 1. Number 2 is, what does it replace? The 3 is, what does it retrieve from the past? Meaning, what type of thing in the past, of ideal thing, does it want to bring back? And number 4, what does it revert back to when it doesn't go right? See, there's technology. And that last step is probably the most important one. What happens when technology goes backwards? What happens, so you say you like cars. Okay, I'll use it as an example. What does it enhance? I get to places faster now. It's awesome. I get to travel much more efficiently than just walking. What does it replace? It replaces the horse. Awesome. I don't have to feed it. I don't have to you have to feed a car with gas and all that sort of things. It probably costs a lot more. Probably should go back to horses. But anyway, and then what does it retrieve from the past? I think the individual, I think the person riding on a horse, the knight type of a mentality that I can go wherever I want. That medieval type of knight. And then lastly, what does it revert back to when it doesn't go right? Try going through Chicago at about 4 p.m. What happens when your car breaks down? You see, technology goes back and reverts, and so that same thing will happen with our technology and our apologetics. I have to tell you, in this thing, you have to understand that technology is not neutral. It moves toward a certain point, and technology is good, but you cannot rest upon technology for the basis of your apologetics. You can't let that, because if it's just, and there's a thing that we're going to look at here, because if it's just up here and you're just browsing the internet and just dashing around from one site, from one link to another, you'll never remember it. Studies have shown that. You won't believe it. You won't hold on to it. Because our brain will wire in a way that it's fired. So if you're always firing your brain in a way that is distracted reading all the time, you will not process that information. You won't, because you're firing it in a certain way that's not deep reading. You're just a pancake instead of a waffle. You're just going right along it. You're not soaking up the information. You're just skimming along like a jet ski instead of being a scuba diver. We need scuba divers when it comes to apologetics. We don't need skim readers. And so that's our culture. That's this whole generation. And so, let me see if I got a quote here. I think I do. Yeah. John Calkin wrote, he was a person that wrote concerning just about the internet, said, we shape our tools and thereafter they shape us. And our modern tools never rest. They start to shape us. Does that sound like Psalm 115? It does. They start to shape who we are. And so what's led is this. Our studying of the Scriptures is now distracted and shallow. Let me give you a case in point of how this looks. Not a case in point, but give me an illustration. If I said, here's a book, I want you to read it. And you say, wow, okay, I'll read this book. But I want you to go read it. I want you to go read it at Cedar Point, which is an amusement park. Sit down there and read it. Okay, I'll sit down and read it. How much are you going to actually read it? And how much are you actually going to focus on that? Not very much. Or go down to Times Square and read a book. Everything's glittering, and you know how that is. You study, and all of a sudden you think, oh, I need to go do this. I need to click on this. And so you start moving around, and it's very distracted at that point. Neil Postman wrote this: new technologies alter the structure of our interests. The things we think about, they alter the character, it should be the character of our symbols. The things we think with. And look at this next one. And they alter the nature of community, the arena in which thoughts develop. And so new technologies alter all three of those things. They alter the way that we think, what we think about, and they alter, you know this as well, the way that we communicate with each other. By the way, I'll just say this, don't do texting and email debates. Texting apologetics doesn't work. I understand you're playing on a level that is so surfacey. You're just skimming. Verbal. Go face to face with that person. Let them see you and you see them. Now that may sound old-fashioned, but by the way, and I'll also say this: well, anymore you can't even tell what's out there anyway. It's all probably public knowledge, from what we learn about the government now. But you know what? You don't know where that text, how it's going to be interpreted. You don't know of who else is going to read it. You don't know how many times that's going to be forwarded. And so our apologetics has been something where it's immediate, it's quick, it's done. I can text back, okay, I'm done with that one. Let me move on. The face-to-face encounters are so much more important. I would go there. And so the last one, Huxley wrote the book Brave New World. You may have heard about it. And it's a pretty famous book, but he wrote this, and he by no means was a Christian apologist, but look at his quote here. They did not foresee the development of vast mass communications industry, concerned in the main neither with the true or the false, but with the unreal, the more or less totally irrelevant. Sounds like the internet. In a word, they failed to take into account man's almost infinite appetite for distractions. So you don't think that technology has now gotten in the way of our apologetics. Now, it's a useful tool, no doubt about it. Useful. But we're going to look at how to deal with this thing, and I'm going to give you some things to try to handle technology. But technology anymore, if you're on anyone's website, you talk about distractions. It's hard to stay focused. And by the way, that's how our conversations are now being played out with each other now. You don't think that the person who gets up here and preaches on a Sunday morning doesn't have to compete with that? And you don't think that when we talk to someone else about apologetics that they're just not easily just, okay, anything more you want to say? I'm distracted already. Unless you're going to, and so we're very distracted now because we become like what we've made. Now, how's technology impacted our apologetics? I got a piece of meat up here, and you can see this. The piece of meat is like this. The medium has become the piece of meat. And it's like a burglar going into your mind. And the burglar says, I got a piece of meat. Here you go, dog. Now I'm going to go get after your mind now. And so that's what the internet and we talk about technology. Technology is this medium where it's throwing up this piece of meat and says, wow, okay, this thing's awesome. I need to use this. And it's the piece of meat that's thrown there, and all of a sudden we're attracted to that while the burglar goes right after us. It's tough. And this is a quote here. And it says, the content of the medium is like a juicy piece of meat carried by the burglar to the distant watchdog of the mind. Marshall McLuhan, Understanding Media, the Extensions of Man. He wrote this. These are great books. Not all of them Christian. In fact, very few of them are Christian. They're just making assessments of what we're after right now. So how has technology impacted apologetics? Let's look here. The 5 general areas here. Oh, man. Okay, here we go. We'll get back to that one. Okay, here we go. It has made us largely uncritical, meaning anything goes. When you talk about technology, it's made us uncritical in the fact that the medium is now more important than the message. And we're very distracted, and so we get very uncritical. Whatever comes, we start to accept. And so apologetics now, if they resource, and most apologetics now are done over the internet. It's not on a personal level. Most things that are being defended are you see the blogs out there. Everyone's defending stuff, and those type of things. And you go to a website and you say, wow, there's where I'm going to get my information there. And you become largely uncritical because you're more fascinated with how it's presented than the content. And you're not even checking out the content. And so, but in the next one, it's made us generally, this kind of goes right against that one a little bit. It's made us generally cynical, meaning the fact that truth can't even be trusted. See the modernistic versus postmodernistic here. Everything, it's made us cynical of just truth in general because I can check it out now. And so apologetics is made like, really? Okay, can I really believe that? Because I got another website that verifies my side of the view. And I have 10 websites that back me. You only have 2. Okay, cynical. It does do that. Number 3, it has made us more alienated. This is a big one. Every student is now their own teacher. When it comes to apologetics, every student is now their own teacher. They look up exactly what they want, and they back the point that they want. That's, boy, if I could just end on that one, that's it. Every person, you get itching ears, and you get that, and you think, wow, okay, that backs my point. You just Google anything, you can back up anything. I'm telling you, you can just Google and find something that supports your view. And so because of that, you start to think, man, okay, I'm my own person here. I don't need to listen to anybody. Why do I need to go to a conference? Why do I need to listen to my pastor? Why do I need to listen to my teacher? I can find my own views, my own, and resource them, and support them. Number 4, we expect the same from life as we do the net. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that the same way that the internet comes to us, we expect in our dealings with other people. The internet will never say, you ready? I don't know. Ever. It never, if you ask it a question, it will never come back and say, hey, sorry, I don't have a clue for that one. But that's life. Some things about God are a big question mark. Or just like, I don't know. And so we now approach and we want to find answers on everything. Now, there are certain answers that we find in Scripture, and we find those supported throughout creation and through all the different things around us. But there are certain times that we say, you know what, I don't know. But as we approach life, everyone wants a definitive answer on everything. And that's where we're moving, and that's and so if I don't find an answer, if you can't give me an answer, I'll Google it. You put a question mark at the end of something, I'll get an answer. And then also, I think that we approach life in a way of distractions. We start to think like computers now. And remember I told you we're like who we are? We quantify everything. That's the purpose of computers. If you're a computer engineer in here, I'll probably mess this up, and I'll do my best to explain it. Computers' basically job is to do two things: to quantify everything, to put it in categories. And then also, it's to make everything abstract, unreal. Those are the two goals of computers. You want to quantify everything. No interpretation. Just give me the facts, quantify it. And so now as we approach life, we quantify and we have a separate thing that we say, okay, that's God over here. That's my life over here. This is my relationship over here. And we quantify everything. Because we're starting to, and so that's just the nature. We separate, because guess what? When you're on the internet, you have so many tabs open, you can't keep track of all of them. Tab here. Okay, oh, I got over here. And so you start, it's just a very separate type of approach of how we view life. And then lastly, it's made us focus more on the facts than on the heart. Here's what I think. That we're so centered around, okay, how many facts can I give to support my view? And here's what I feel like sometimes. I feel like when I get together with someone who disagrees with me, and they have their load of facts, and I have my load of facts, you know what it feels like? I feel like it's a euchre game, and we don't even play. We just lay down all of our hands and say, okay, that's just the way it was. You know, you ever been there before where you just kind of like, okay, this is my hand. Everyone just lay it out, because that's how you would have played. This is how I play. Okay, and you just, okay, who cares? Apologetics has turned in sometimes where it's a fact-throwing contest. And we just kind of lay down our cards and say, okay, you got all your facts, I got all my facts. Instead of saying, you know what, God's going to work in your heart. And I don't know how it's going to be played. And I can throw all the facts at you, and I can research the tar out of this thing, and I can have support on this that you wouldn't believe, but it still doesn't make the heart change. And I think sometimes when it comes to apologetics, we have more. I love the fact that I have more sources now. I love it when I watch a video of William Lane Craig just demolishing Christopher Hitchens. I love that. I'm like, yeah, this is so awesome. And if you haven't watched that YouTube video, you need to watch it. Okay, because I watch Craig, and he's just like, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Hitchens is still an unbeliever, last time I checked. And so we think because we can defend and we can we have more facts on our side we've ever had before. But it doesn't make the heart any different. And I think that's the effect on apologetics. A couple more quotes here. And this is The Shallows. If you have not read this book, The Shallows, it's called What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. This is a New York bestseller. This guy has written for it. Because dozens of studies by psychologists, neurobiologists, and educators and web designer points to the same conclusion. When we go online, we enter an environment that promotes cursory reading, hurried and distracted thinking, and superficial learning. Does that mean I shouldn't learn on the internet? No. It doesn't mean that. But deep reading cannot be replaced by internet resourcing. Okay? And I like this. Tim Challies, he has a great blog, by the way. Has one of the best Christian blogs out there. The Next Story, Life and Faith After Digital Explosion. It says constant distraction leads to shallow thinking, and that shallow thinking leads to shallow living. You wonder why we have so many people walking away? Because the next best website has what they believe in. And this shallow thinking, we're living in a pancake world instead of a waffle world, where the waffle takes the syrup and sucks it in, and the pancake's very thin and just very shallow. So let's go. I got the point right below that, cultivators versus hunters. I love this point here. What I mean by that, we've become, let me see if I even have this slide up here. Yeah, I do. Here it is. Sorry if that offends you. I'm just joking. I don't really. But you know what? I think we've turned into hunters instead of cultivators when it comes to our faith and when it comes to apologetics. Let me explain. Cultivators take it and they develop it and till the soil and plant a seed and water it and let it develop and let it grow. And there's something there that we can see what it becomes, and there's a vested interest in that. That's great apologetics, where we plan it and we think about it and we mull over it, we read a book, but the other part is that the other side of that is a hunter, where we go online and we hunt for exactly what we want. Now, is there wrong between either one? No. Sometimes I need to hunt. Sometimes I need to go out there, the very thing I need to find. But I can't live off that. I need to cultivate. I need to cultivate those beliefs. I need to cultivate those things I say I believe in, and let them just meditate. I need to meditate on those things. And not just go out there and hunt for the facts that I know I want or I need to support my view. Cultivate it, and then let it. And as you're reading Scripture and you're doing it, and then you see, wow, this grew into something. I knew it was this. I knew from the seed I was planting that it would turn into this. But man, it just keeps on growing and keeps on giving, and it's something where I have an interest. I have a vested interest in that, and so here, this is kind of interesting. I don't even know what this. Okay, 2 pages here. Here we go. This was a study done in UCLA by Gary Small. Gary Small, not Gary Smalley, but Gary Small, and he's a head of this department out in UCLA. He did a whole study. He's a director of Memory and Aging Center out there. Wrote several books, but he wrote this: the current explosion of digital technology not only is changing the way we live and communicate, but is rapidly profoundly altering our brains. The daily use of computers, smartphones, search engines, and other such tools stimulates brain cell alteration and neurotransmitter release, gradually strengthening new neural pathways in our brains and while weakening old ones. Do you know what he's talking about there? I read the whole article, and you can read this whole thing. What it's saying is this, is that we're gearing our brains for shallow thinking, not to remember very much. Your brain will fire. If it keeps on firing in the same way, it will develop paths in that way. So if everything we learn is always shallow and immediate and distracted, that is the way that our brains are going to start getting wired. You wonder why we're not remembering a lot? And we can't recall a lot of the things, the details. That's our way our brains are being wired right now. Because your brain, it is malleable. The way that it fires is the way that it's going to be wired. So if you constantly start firing it in that way, it's going to eventually wire in that way. And so this is a study he's got. I'm not saying because he has books about this, but this is a recognized. And this is, wow. You mean if I just keep on going to the internet, that I'm going to remember less, but I may know more? Maybe. Maybe. And so there's another person here. Says our growing use of the net and other screen-based technologies has led to a widespread and sophisticated development of visual spatial skills. We can, for example, rotate objects in our minds better than we used to be able to, meaning we're 3D. We can picture things like that a lot better. But our new strengths in visual spatial technology go hand in hand with a weakening of our capacities for the deep processing that underpins mindful knowledge, acquisition, inductive analysis, critical thinking, imagination, and reflection. We're firing our brains right now in a certain way where we cannot think, in a way that allows it to think about the things of God on a deep level. You wonder why apologetics are taking place over texting or Twitter, and we don't go deep. We can't. We don't know how, because that's how we're being wired right now, and so there's a lot of UCLA did a lot of studies on this, and so let's look here. And it goes into this whole thing. Socrates said this. He said this: information without instruction. And I think that verbal side of it really needs to be there, or the deep reading part. And so it's kind of like this. I had a book, and it was one of the books I've been reading for this whole study. And I gave it to my dad. And and I didn't realize, this is kind of, to give you a great illustration of this. I gave it to my dad, and he looks open, and he sees that it's all highlighted, but just the important parts. He goes, oh, good, I'll just read that part. You see what the internet's doing? We just read the important parts. It's like giving my book to someone, and all, you know how that goes. You get a highlighted book. You know how hard it is to read the unhighlighted parts? You don't even want to. You're like, man, if I read an unhighlighted part, it makes me like a lot dumber than that person, because why would I highlight something they didn't? And so so that's the way I think is a good illustration of how the internet changes us. We look for highlighted parts, and that's what we run with. But you know what? There's a lot of good stuff in there, or we start, and it limits us, and what we can think about. Now, let me go quickly. How should we use the computer technology in regards to apologetics? My list here could be a mile long, but I'm just going to give it. You know what this whole study started out with? I was going to give you the tools that I thought were really cool in apologetics, which I still have that. I had like the greatest and best websites, and I'll still give it to you, but not yet, because you'd be distracted by this. If I gave it to you now, you'd be looking it up. But I'm going to go over some of this stuff. But I kind of gave you here the best websites, the best apps, the best things that I've used in relation to my ministry, but also what I've known to work out there as far as just good stuff. But that was my initial thing when I wanted to do this, and I'm thinking, man, if I tell them, it's kind of like giving a bunch of, it's kind of like with my kids, of sending them into a big smorgasbord and not telling them what things to eat and what that food's going to do to them. Kids, when you go in there, you're going to go right for the desserts first. Let me tell you what you need to eat when you go in here. So if I would have gave this, it would have been a great smorgasbord. You're like, yeah, this is awesome, but what would I have been doing? I'm still going to give it to you, maybe. Okay, but anyway, here we go. First one. I like this. In the end, well, we'll get to that one. First one, take time to process information. Don't be an information glutton. Please. Just because it's there, process that information. Sit on it. Let it cultivate it. I'm the first one to talk here. You're at a conference that's going to give you full facts here. Process that stuff. Think about it. And just think, okay, how does that apply? How cultivate that? Till the soil. And think about it. Number 2, B, acknowledge there's a sin problem, not just a facts problem. Man, if you're going to go after the apologetics, acknowledge that it's just not throwing facts at one side versus the other. 3, stay focused on target in your discussion and your research. I'll give you, that's big. You know how hard that is to do when you're doing the research, especially if it's online? You know, when you get those things that pop up like, oh, you got a message, and you're like, man, okay, what do I do? And here's what I do. I would encourage you to do this. Number 4, or a D right there. Make hard copies of what is on the internet and to study and to read. I'd encourage you to do that. If you find a good article, print it off. Then read it. Okay? You may have to pay some more money on ink and paper, and I understand. Print it off and then read it and soak it in and highlight it. Void of the distractions that are there. And I do that all the time. That's a great, I would encourage you. You have a whole folder of stuff that you want to read. But do that. That way you can, even if it doesn't have a print button on the website or something like that, still print it off. And then E, be specific in searches. I write on there, I don't know if I wrote on yours, but I'd PDF a lot of your searches. You know what I'm talking there? Whenever you do a Google search, put the topic that you're looking at and put PDF right after it. That means it's going to be void of a lot of the distractions. It also shows that it was probably printed and used in in a venue. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to do it every time, but I do a lot of that. I just write the topic and then write PDF afterwards. A lot of times that means it was used in a classroom setting or a conference setting. it will really weed out a lot of the stuff that wasn't put in print. Usually if it's put in print, usually it means there was a little bit more effort or but not always, but I do that a lot. Encourage written sources and face-to-face encounters. When you're doing apologetics, I'd encourage you to do that. I'd encourage you to have them read something. I know that's tough because a lot of people don't read now. Then do face-to-face then with them when it comes to apologetics. Just don't refer them to a website and say, please look at this, and then do this. H, do not just give answers or facts, but show the process of obtaining those facts. Challenge someone to interact with the facts, and do they actually believe them? I kind of use this illustration, but whenever I teach, I want someone to know how I came to those conclusions so they can walk the same road. The internet just gives you, remember the highlighted book, it's just going to give you the highlighted parts. I would encourage you to let them see the process if you're talking to someone of how you came to those answers versus just giving the answers. That happens from everywhere. We need to do that when we're teaching, when we're preaching. Don't just give the answers. Say, here's how I came to these conclusions. Here's how this is verified. That's very important. And then don't be afraid to call out the misuse of technology for what it is. Sometimes an idol and sometimes sin. In your own life. Not always. Trust me, I like to resource stuff. I like to look things up. I like to have those things. But it doesn't replace meditation. It doesn't replace deep reading. It doesn't replace the one-on-ones. And so, sometimes it is. Sometimes I just get this thing out just because. I say I'm doing. How many of you ever done a Bible study on your computer and you got so easily distracted on it, on your phone? I mean, you're reading it and all of a sudden, you're in some little land next. And so we get easily distracted on that, and that impacts us. And then J, this has to do with all of us. Limit or control your use of computer technology. I'm thankful that books and writing got, the Sumerians were the ones that really came up with the writing a long time ago. That was just Socrates when he wrote that. And then the Greek came up with the alphabet in 750 BC and all that. I'm glad all those things came about. I'm glad the Gutenberg press was invented. I'm glad all those advancements in technology. But technology can be something that's used in a way that is good. And you all know this, but it's not neutral. When those phones and all those things come out, there's an intention behind it. And then I was going to give you helpful resources, but I want you to look at this here. Lewis Smedes wrote this, in the end, God will come to fix his world and make it altogether good again. In between, his children are to go into the world and create some imperfect models of the good world to come. I love that type of definition of technology. Man, someday I won't have to text someone. Someday I won't have to research and look at those things. But right now, I'm out there trying to create imperfect models of what it is to come. And so I could have went all these through here. Okay, I got one more quote here, and then that'll be it. You can tell I don't use technology too often. Here we go. I like this. This was last thing I'll say. The apologist understands that technology must never be accepted as part of a natural order of things. That every technology, from an IQ test to an automobile to a television, set to a computer, is a product of a particular economic and political context and carries with it a program, an agenda, and a philosophy that may or may not be life-changing, and that therefore requires scrutiny, criticism, and control. In short, a technological resistant fighter maintains an epistemological and physical distance from any technology so that it always appears somewhat strange, never inevitable, never natural. I love that quote. Neil Postman, if you have not, Amusing Ourselves to Death. And he also wrote this other book, Technopoly, and he's since passed away. But he understood It's a great book. If you've not read that book, either one of his books, it's a great thing. But keep that distance. Just don't get so into it that you can't let go of it. Use it. And it always seemed like this isn't natural because it's pushing back the fall. I know it's not the way that things should be, but I'm using it, and it helps my life. It helps me because I'm weak in these areas. I can't walk 10 miles, so I'm going to take a car. Thank goodness for technology. But you know what? It also can be used in a way that's, as we've discussed here, that's not God-honoring as well. So anyway, I'll pass these things out. I'll have them up here. You can grab them and everything. But I think I don't know if we have 5 minutes or no minutes. Yeah, we've got 3 minutes. I don't know if there's any questions or anything. Or now you're all going to put away your phones and put away everything. Right? Yeah.
It seems as though college is teaching kids the same way as far as your sources, your paper, your sources, just facts, just no thinking through. Just get them, get the facts, put them in the paper, you're done.
It is. It's very much fact related. In fact, all the online courses now, and I'm not saying those are wrong. Those are great, but it's part of that nonverbal way of instructing people. It's not even written anymore. And so we're taking, and you do it online, and all those distractions. Distracted learning becomes distracted living. And distracted living, leads to shallow thinking, and shallow thinking leads to shallow living. Yeah, I think that we have to battle and at least know that when I'm online, that it's not the same as me deep reading and me thinking about those things and meditating. Just because I have all the facts at my disposal and I can spit them out. How many of our teens have left or graduated and think, I know all the answers and I knew the facts, but it wasn't here? I don't know. So, any other? Yeah.
If technology is our idol, how would we take steps to removing its place of power in our hearts and returning it to a place where we're using it more for like the greater power of God?
Yeah, I mean, as with anything, I kind of refer back maybe to 1 Corinthians chapter 8, where Paul talks about food sacrificed to idols and say, hey, to some, this is idol, but you may not want to do this. To me, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't, to some people, Facebook and Twitter is it. And to me, I don't really care. Okay, I'm not that big a deal. Now, am I going to label that because it's not a big deal to me and say that's totally wrong? Well, if it's wrong to this person, then and if it's used in a way that then they need to abstain, and I'm going to respect that. And if I can use it and say, okay, it's used in a way that honors God in that way. So as far as I think it's a matter, you can't get rid of it. It's our. I would seek out other ways of communicating. I would seek out other ways of resourcing and studying than those ways. I'm print out stuff if you're doing research, and it is our way of communication today. Facebook and Twitter. But if it's going to be a deep conversation, do not allow it to go to that spectrum. That's just me and my views. I want verbal. I want face-to-face. I want to be able to communicate with you. So, but if it's something to you that you're, wow, I can't handle this anymore, I'd go to, hey, take it away for a season. By the way, there's an awesome resource. I watched this video on this. It's a video that we watched within a youth group. I got to meet. His name is Philip Tefler, and he made this video. It's called Captivated. It's an awesome video. It's on the resources up here. I would encourage you to watch this video. If you're part of a church or anything, watch it. It talks about the whole impact of media on our culture. It's a great watch. The teens loved watching it. And it just talks about, case examples where people said, you know what, I'm giving it up for a season. I'm fasting from it. Food's not going to have control of my body. This smartphone's not going to have control. I'm fasting from it, just to show, just to get back control. So, yeah.
I'm just going to give kind of a comment, but I was hoping that you could elaborate more on it, kind of give us some more of it. But I'm somewhat taken from what you're saying, and I really appreciate it, is that, we've been given, as Paul writes, the doctrine of reconciliation, which sounds like a part of it. Return to a community. Return, to some semblance of unity, obviously, within the parameters of how the Bible, describes that. And yet, I find the effects of technology very isolated. So we've got all this technology which we use as a medium for communication, but like you said, there's no face-to-face. I can see a text, but I don't know the person's expression behind the text. I don't get that emotional context from what you're telling me. I mean, can you talk more about it?
Well, that's what they desire too. I think there's a faceless, anyone can say anything on the internet, and anyone can post anything, and it becomes, we become very cynical of that, and very uncritical. We just don't evaluate. You just pursue those type of relationships in your own life, in regarding to when it comes to apologetics. I think there's something to be said about a resources out there that are at our disposal. I mean, I think we have more resources now than ever before to back our to back our faith. But I just wouldn't settle for that. I don't know if that answers the question. I want those face-to-face encounters, exactly what you're talking about there. I think it does lead to isolation. I think it does lead to alienation. And we just come up with some obscured views that we just Google whatever we want our answer to be. And so I think that I'm very hesitant. I want them here's what it turns into. We lack the trust anymore of someone who's teaching versus someone who's on the internet. Or someone who's in person doesn't quite have the credibility of someone I've never seen. And a lot of times that's because we can see their lifestyle. And we lose credibility because of our lifestyle. And so I'd rather trust someone I don't know their lifestyle than someone I can see it and I don't really like it, so I'm not going to believe them. See, I think that maybe has something to do with, I think Craig made the point in one of his apologetics. He uses the best apologetics that I can ever give is my lifestyle. And there's a guy that can debate with the best of them. And he says my lifestyle is the one that is the best way to defend my faith. And so I think there's something there, if I go face to face, that person's going to come right back at me. And they're going to say, what's up? Because you say you believe this, but I don't see your life showing it. So I'm going to go to a website where I don't know the person's lifestyle, and I can believe them better. There's something there. We've lacked the credibility as people, the integrity as individuals to be able to go one-on-one with someone. So I'd rather keep it distant because I don't want you looking at my life. And then if I can email or text, then that's better. But if you go to a website, you definitely don't know the person. So, and true apologetics takes place, on a one-on-one. Last thing, and we'll go.
As a counterpoint to that, technology can also bring the church together. For instance, the ABF Center, one of the ABFs in our church, the way we actually communicate and get together is we send out a Facebook message so everybody knows we need to meet at this point, we need to talk here.
Exactly. I think it's great. We don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's here. Okay, you can't get rid of it. I mean, I'm not here to. I'm just. We're just discussing. Hey, this thing comes with. It needs to be scrutinized. It needs to be looked at. We need to make sure we have control over this thing and realize what we're getting from it. Remember the first points. You get some good things with it, but you also lose some things with it. Any bit of technology, you always gain something, but you always lose something.